Okay, everybody, good evening. You have welcome back to another episode of Awoken with Aulden. I am your host, Aulden S. Nance, and we have a very special episode to get to you on this Wednesday evening, December the 10th of 2025. We come back from a 7-day pause last week. We discussed Somalia and Somaliland, some crucial topics. We had just a little recap of last week. We had the Minnesota scandal, which is blowing up in real time about the governor. His competency is in major question and in serious doubt at the moment. But let's fast forward to this week's episode. We have the national security strategy released, I believe, last Thursday night, released by the White House. And it includes several topics to where I could not bring this to your attention and awoken you of the national security strategy of 2025, produced by the second Trump administration. A major change from the 2017 strategy and an even bigger change from the Biden 2022 agenda that was released. Lots of significant shifts in foreign policy in all of the different regions on planet Earth. So we're going to dive. That's our main topic for the evening. Have my a wonderful friend that will be joining me in a few moments. But first, wanted to do a little Indiana Hoosier gloating. And the Indiana Hoosiers, I believe for the first time in either ever or gotta be the past half century, that the Hoosiers are the number one overall seed in the college football playoff, an undefeated 13-0 season. They were undefeated and ran through the Big Ten with ease, other than the UCLA game, which I'm sure you remember Gus Johnson's glorious and Hall of Fame type call he did there with his voice cracked probably 4 or 5 times. He couldn't even breathe. He was so ecstatic about the result of the play. And it got to the point where now this is only head coach's Cignetti's second season, 13-0. He's only lost 2 games in 2 years. The playoff game last year, and I believe against Ohio State, and either they were undefeated at the time. But I digress to the point to where we need to give a big shout out to the Hoosiers. Congratulations to Coach Cignetti on a phenomenal undefeated season. They are the top dogs. We will continue. This will be a subplot in the show. It's not a sporty show by any means, but we will continue to. It's worth a couple of minutes at the beginning of the show each time to see how the Hoosiers are doing. I think, at least. Okay, so before we get into the national security strategy, I would like to remind you to please pound that subscribe button, that follow button, leave the video a like, share a comment, let me know how you think myself and my inaugural guest are doing on the show. Leave us questions. We're happy to have formal verbal dialogue with you at any time, because America First is the motto, and that's what we want for this country. And I will say, before we even dive into that, we are both, or at least myself, have to say, very pleased with the rhetoric of this NSS, very America First rhetoric. And we're going to give you a full breakdown. So without further ado, we are going to hop in, or actually, one second. I would like to introduce to you our first inaugural guest of the show, Alex Gage, a phenomenal patriot, comes from the state of Colorado originally, and he's a very hard worker, loves this country, and is devoting a lot of his time towards putting America first. So, Alex, take it away, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Aulden. Thanks for having me on your show. It's real fun to be on here. I've never been on a YouTube show before, so this is pretty cool. Like you said, from Colorado. We met here in DC about 2 or 3 years ago, and we've been friends ever since. And it's just great to be here with you. And I think that we're going to have a real fun and interesting conversation tonight, because prior to coming to Washington and really immersing myself in this world of politics, I didn't even know about the NSS or the NDS or any of these other acronyms that actually matter and have an impact on people and their safety, security, and prosperity. So looking forward to diving into this with you, man.
Absolutely. Alrighty. Without further ado, we'll bring out the OG PowerPoint per usual. Let's get this guy going here. Yeah, this is the excellent. Perfect. Okay. So, as we mentioned a few moments ago, the president's 2025 National Security Strategy, the Focus America First Blueprint. So, what is strategy actually? When we're thinking about America on the world stage, and even in your day-to-day life, you're trying to think, how can I make more money? How can I advance myself? How can I do whatever to advance my priorities? And what is your strategy? And you have to have a good strategy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's like, if I remember correctly, it comes from Sun Tzu, from The Art of War, the ancient Chinese general, and he put it really well. In order to win at anything, whether that's a war or a football game, or you want to pass a test for school, you need a strategy and you need tactics. Tactics without strategy, you'll get failure. Strategy without tactics, you'll get failure. And so, right, the U.S. military is a tool. It's a very powerful tool, and it's got all these different tactics at its disposal that it can use to achieve its objectives. But a U.S. military, a tool, without a overall strategy of how to use the tool, you get directionless activity. And so the reason why the national security strategy is so important is because it is the guidance document for the entire national security overall guiding mission, the strategy, the guiding principles, the goals that we're trying to achieve. It is setting the tone and the mission and what we're actually trying to achieve for the next rest of this administration. So for the next 3 years. So the strategy is an incredibly important piece of getting America from where it is now into a more America first foreign policy position 3 years from now. So this is a key document, and like you said, defining strategy and what it is, it's key.
Certainly. Yeah, we're trying to, project a good strategy for the country in the next 3 years. Absolutely. Let's next guy. And absolutely, where, each admin releases an NSS, I believe, by a law passed by Congress in 1986, I believe, or 1968, but I think 1986. And, where did it go wrong since then? And you have to take into your history. When I even was discussing Somalia last week, why was Somalia a big factor in the early 90s? Is because you have the Cold War, and there was a once the USSR collapsed, broke into all these smaller states, you had the US wanting to police the world, which we still do up to a point. But it was all of these strategies prior, were very vague and bloated. And something this time I think was very good about the strategies that essentially they said, all right, here's like our 5 or 6 biggest priorities that we want to achieve. And they just kind of went from there. So it was more transparent than prior NSSs.
This national security strategy takes the country in a much different direction, right? Because as your first point here, post Cold War global domination mindset. I don't know if domination is the word I would use, but it's the continuation of this trend, basically, that during the Cold War, you had these 2 global superpowers that were duking it out with each other. And that's where you got all these proxy wars and proxy conflicts, Korea, Vietnam, for example, right? And that was 2 different worldviews, 2 different economic systems, government systems at conflict with one another. And so America would be, in order to counter, right, the communist expansion, really anywhere it would pop up in the world, like the way we funded the Mujahideen in the 1980s, or crushed communist movements here in our hemisphere. You needed to have a very global approach where we're spreading democracy, we're spreading freedom. Well, what it was actually doing was trying to counter communist expansion. And once the Soviet Union collapsed, this weird trend, as far as I can tell, just kind of kept going on its own inertia. And maybe it's because it sounds nice and warm and fuzzy that we're the most powerful country in the world in history, but we're rooting for democracy everywhere, and we're going to try to make the world a free and prosperous and democratic world. When not every country wants or has to be that way. It's like this strange obsession of the U.S. and to say, well, we want democracy everywhere and freedom everywhere, and we're going to solve the world's problems, and be in the global police force. It was very globally centered, as opposed to centered on what benefits the American national interest. Right? Like if you look at the Biden national security strategy, it's very outwardly focused. We're going to make the world more democratic. We're going to, and it's so strange, right? Like in the Biden document, they were talking about climate change. Well, if there's one thing that war does, it destroys whatever climate the war's being fought in, right?
Yeah.
But
mass destruction, oil, all that junk.
Exactly, right. But we're having climate change and diversity for the world in the Biden national security strategy. It's ridiculous, right? And who cares about standing up democratic systems in other countries if it doesn't benefit us? And that's what's so great about the Trump national security strategy, is that it refocuses everything on the question is, what interaction are we having with the rest of the world? Doesn't matter what country it is, who the leader is, or whatever. How does it benefit us? Right? I mean, it's so refreshing to see a president who's like, we're done with this farce of trying to save the world with resources we don't have, while our country is beginning to crack under, well, frankly, because the country's been neglected for so long, while the federal government's trying to save the world. It's so refreshing to see this new America First policy, with the number one question being, how does this benefit the United States? And so it's great.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I've been talking too much. This is your show, not mine.
Oh, no, man. We're having a good time. Inaugural guest, we need to make it important and for people to remember. All right. So, and Alex touched up on this a few seconds ago. What is the president and this administration doing much better. Alex mentioned a great point, is that the federal government is trying to police the world and being a globalist and trying to save the world, while our nation is collapsing under $38 trillion in debt, crime in all of the major cities, any issue, illegal immigration is a major problem. So it's a more America First doctrine.
And it was good to see the president, Trump, include American cultural and family issues as part of the national security strategy. Because, of course, the nuclear family is the bedrock of society. The whole point of society really is to the alpha and omega of really any society, as I can tell based on my knowledge and perspective, is the alpha and omega of society is the family. If you have weak families, eventually the ripple effects, the outcomes will be you have a weak country, right? Like we're in a demographic slump, for example. Like Americans are simply not having enough kids. Eventually we'll have an old country that's straining heavily on our social safety net programs, and then we won't have any young people to man the battle systems when it's time to defend us from a foreign threat, for example. So that was amazing to see Trump put in his own national security strategy, not climate change and global warming, and say, no, we need to rebuild American culture, American traditional families. And he even said the same of Europe, right? I don't want to get ahead of my skis here, but Trump was saying, like, if Europe doesn't turn around and be European again, we might not have the same Europe in 20 years, and that different Europe might not be so friendly to the United States anymore, right? So
totally,
that was I think something new and really encouraging to see as well.
Certainly, and we're going to dive into that a little deeper here in a few slides from now.
Oh, sorry, I got ahead, I guess.
No, it's all very good points because we're going to be talking about it.
And it all intermingles with one another. It all interconnects.
Oh, totally. And like you have especially the Europe point, which, yeah, I don't want to get ahead of myself either, but we'll stick with the what America wants in terms of national security, is that the issue that I believe in all Republicans, no matter what on the spectrum you are in the GOP, is that the defining issue that brought the party and the coalition together was immigration, period. There's too many illegal immigrants in the nation. There's been 10 to 11 million that have entered under the Biden era. And we've seen the videos. It's almost like a Black Friday in 2009 of people trying to get the newest cell phone plan of illegals trying to get across the border during the Joe Biden era. So we want, a much more safe, sovereign republic. We deserve that and should demand that as citizens. We want strong borders and immigration enforcement. We don't want illegals here. It's cheating. It's against the law. It's unfair to legal immigrants who have spent the time and the money and the resources. And it's also if you can control who's entering your nation, that you can vet them better, and it's a much less risk of sleeper cells or other threats and, foreign corruption and influence.
Right. If we can stick on the illegal immigration topic for a second, right? This is something that I think has only been recast as a front and center national security issue with Trump 2.0, right? Sorry, I'm looking away from the camera. I poured myself some tea. Nothing better than some tea in the evening after a work day.
Oh, yeah, after a long work day. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, we as Westerners, as living in a Christian nation with a Christian moral tradition, have the uh, we have a certain degree of openness, right? We have this idea that all humans are made in the image of God, and so we want to help our fellow man, and these are all nice things. But what has um, one thing that we have forgotten in the modern day as Americans, or you see stories that we're going on a trip to Africa to build electrical infrastructure or build roads and whatnot, and that's all well and good as long as it's privately funded. But what I think has totally gotten away from us is two words: realpolitik and pragmatism, right? For example, what we just saw the day before Thanksgiving of that Afghan national who was let in by the Biden administration. Um, what was it? Operation Allies Welcome, after Afghanistan collapsed. Well, here's the thing: like at the end of the day, we're a country with finite resources, and while I wish all 8 billion plus people in the world the best, I wish them well. I hope that they have a good life and good health and all that stuff. Um, the people that I care about are American citizens, right, and nobody else, right? Those are
Totally.
the only people that matter to me is U.S. citizens, and so it might sound a bit harsh. It might not sound like such a nice thing, but the fact of the matter is that we were pulling out of Afghanistan. You worked with us, and the Taliban's gonna kill you if we don't bring you back. Too bad. You're not a U.S. citizen. We're not going to bring you here and put you on our welfare system and have you build an enclave that rejects America, doesn't want to assimilate, and then have some whack job who was let in by the Biden administration come in and kill a National Guard's soldier uh, for no reason that I can tell, right? And so we have to put American citizens first at all times, okay? And illegal immigration is a national security threat, because if you have people, American citizens, that are put out of work because illegal labor, right? You're going to have a very discontent population after a certain amount of time, right? And so discontent breeds resentment, breeds civil strife, right? All this crime that we're seeing, uh, it definitely is an issue of national security. It's not just a local crime, a local issue, because this creates um, a breakdown in social cohesion and in civil society, civil order. And these things trickle up. And if you have a weak, fractured country within, because you're shipping in tens of millions of people that are altering not the fabric of the country, the makeup of the country, the culture of the country, you end up you don't have a nation anymore, right? Like America is not an economic zone. As JD Vance said, we are a people with a culture and a heritage and a history, and if we want to have a strong nation with strong national security, we need to remember who we are. Right? One of the things that collapsed Rome, and we definitely should reference Rome, because America was the founders set up America basically as a new Rome, right? We need to look at the mistakes of history so that we don't repeat those same mistakes. And uh, large scale immigration and basically uh, not importation, but large scale immigration and the entering of Rome from different tribes, particularly the Germanic tribes, was one of the things that led to the collapse of Rome, and we should definitely be aware of that, because this is worrying stuff, right? And uh, our foreign adversaries, right, are looking at this, right, and they're saying it's good for our foreign adversaries to see Americans not trusting each other, not having safe streets, being scared to go outside at night, right? and sorry to backtrack a little bit, but to have our country, I keep harping on this because it's so absurd, and sorry if I'm repeating myself, but China was probably laughing, and loving that Biden had climate change as one of his national security priorities, because that is a shift of our resources away from our global position towards investing in absolute garbage, while China makes actual concrete inroads and growth in its national interest, right? So, sorry, I'm speaking too much, but yes, mass deportations is America first. It's for our national security. The only people that matter are U.S. citizens, because we have finite resources, we have limitations, and when you're dealing with finite resources, you need to prioritize those resources. And American citizens, the taxpayers, should be the ones benefiting from that. Nobody else. So,
Of course, and you mentioned the Afghan national. How much is a U.S. service member's life worth over all of those other? We understand they helped us in the insurgency and help, but is there another NATO ally they could go to? We have all these greatest allies that we're told about, and none of them they never have the space for anyone else, apparently. So that's a great point you make.
right. We don't owe anyone anything. We don't owe the world at all for anything. The only people that we owe anything to are to ourselves. And that needs to be a whole thought paradigm shift, not only of the federal government and the neocons, like, some members of Congress are. I'm thinking like Lindsey Graham, for example, who just wants to bomb everybody and throw all this money at this and that, right? No, we don't owe anybody anything. That's a thought paradigm shift that we need to reinforce and rekindle in this country, right? Because that is America first, right? Is the only people that matter are Americans. Everyone and everything else is secondary, right? For example, like it needs to mean something to be American. It doesn't. What does it mean anymore, right? Like we want to talk about immigration and, of course, transnational crime. These Venezuelan narco terrorists, okay, that are shipping in lethal drugs into our country, they're not American citizens. And so they don't need to have trials. They don't need to be treated like American citizens, okay? No, you're a foreign national transporting illegal lethal drugs into the United States. We're going to kill you. And we're going to kill you on camera as a deterrent so that other foreign nationals don't get the same idea, right? That's America first.
Yeah, it's a warning to the rest of the world, and as we saw even in Venezuela earlier today, the president and the admin released the video of seizing that oil tanker.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, it was bound for Iran. Yeah,
correct. Yeah, so it's a middle finger to the Iranians and the Venezuelans that if you're going to try to, and we'll get into this here. We'll keep the presentation going, but one more tidbit is that the president, reemphasized the Monroe Doctrine in the sense that none, whether the Iranians, the Chinese, or the Russians cannot have they cannot piggyback off of any nation on our hemisphere, and we'll get into that here. So we want power. We, as Alex mentioned, we are currently the global empire. No one else ultimately matters because we can kind of do what we want up to a point, in the sense that we have, especially in our hemisphere, what is Maduro going to do? Just make a bunch of rap videos of him dancing? That dude's his pie is already cooked.
Yeah, I mean, going back to that oil tanker, I was on X looking at some posts about it, and I saw this one post, and apparently some reporter, and I could be wrong, but as I understand it, some reporter asked Trump, like, "What are you going to do with this seized oil tanker and its contents?" And Trump said, "We're going to keep it." That's so refreshing, and that to hear, and that is America first. You're a foreign adversary transporting oil on a sanctioned oil vessel to a sanctioned country, and it's like, you know what? We're taking your ship, and we're going to keep it. It's ours now.
And try and stop us.
It's ours now. Yeah, because we like to think of this. Uh, oh, the world, we're all trying to get along and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, on the global playing field, there seems to be an element that might makes right. Okay. And to see Trump really just lay down the hammer and say, no, this is ours now, and you're not going to do a thing about it. That's awesome.
Certainly. And that's what we want, power. We want to be, we like to see the action, right? We were talking earlier that this is a lot, the NSS is just verbal dialogue on paper, but that was action that we saw earlier today. So certainly, and we'll head to, yeah. So what do we want as the global empire around the world? And we alluded to this a little earlier. We want the Western Hemisphere to be certainly aligned, and the NSS essentially described that it's the best way that we can advance power towards China, and Europe being 2 decades away from not even being Europe of what we knew it to be 50 years ago. It's totally changing. This mass migration is destroying the social fabric of the nation, or of the continent even, and it's causing lots of crime and social dysfunction. Certainly.
I mean, going back to the transnational drug trade, China is selling the fentanyl precursors to cartels that are funneling it into the United States. I'm sorry, they send the precursors to South America to these different drug organizations, these cartels, who synthesize the chemicals into fentanyl and sell it to the United States, or bring it into the United States to poison Americans. Right? The Chi-Coms know what they're doing. Okay. They're not just trying to make some money by sending the precursors. They know that the Pacific Ocean's big, okay, and no one's really going to invade the United States. The United States of America is not a country that will collapse by foreign invasion, okay? It's just not going to happen, okay? And I think it was Abe Lincoln who said a house divided cannot stand, and I'm pretty sure it was Abe Lincoln that basically I'm like 95% certain that Abe Lincoln was the one who said America will fall from within rather than from without, and China's trying to speed that process along to their own interest. You see, China is China first, and I don't like what they're doing, but I can't blame what they're doing because China is for China. America needs to be for America. Right. And so, anyways, I just wanted to say that.
Those are very great points. And yeah, all other nations take their own side ultimately. And for too many decades, we have not been taking our own side. So we're glad to see the change. And so what are the current cards that we play, that can play, and that we really have? We have the world's strongest military, the largest and richest economy on earth, and even people can agree or disagree with it, but we have NATO, we have powers in the Mideast on our side. India is kind of like the cute chick at the bar. Every dude's talking to them, and we're talking to them as well. We have the global South. We're trying to get the Western Hemisphere 100% aligned with us.
India is an interesting cat.
Mm.
Uh, they don't like the Chi-Coms. They're constantly beefing with the Chi-Coms, but they buy a lot of military hardware from Russia. And I think Trump has been doing some work on it. I think I don't want to say anything that's incorrect or give your viewers wrong information, but Trump is trying to do some negotiations with India, and they're buying Russian weapons and Russian gas. But uh, India is part of the Quad, right? The Quad to hold in China. The Quad is Japan, Australia, United States, and India. You got over 1 billion people. Okay, it's a developing country. All right, India's got a lot of work to do, but um, it is in America's interest to have India on our side. Now, what does that mean? Does having India on our side mean we're going to spend trillions of dollars, uh, helping India get running water and electricity and broadband internet? No, that's India's problem. Okay, but if India plays ball with us, we'll reward them with good behavior. Right? It's basic psychology if you think about it.
Certainly. And yeah, they have over, it's the world's largest country, over a billion people, I believe, live inside the nation. And they have a lot of, uh, as you mentioned, some people without internet or water or access to a toilet, whatever, they had um, and it's a caste system society, because you had I believe a couple of months ago you saw the videos of them throwing poop, or they were running through poop or something, literally something like that. So it's a wide swath of society within the world's largest country. So something that I was particularly impressed by, at least, is that the admin also saw the national security isn't just foreign threats; it's that we need, whether through its tariffs or other means, is to get our economy better. We cannot continue to outsource good paying industrial jobs like in Gary, Indiana, that city, Northwest Indiana. Totally, it's a ghost town. It's abandoned. It got to the point where it was so bad where they stopped updating signs on the highway of places that existed prior. The schools did not, when they were shut down, they did not ever remove signage or other infrastructure to show that they were shut down. It's almost like if there was a some kind of atrocity to where the people just vanished. So in cities like that got the president elected in 16 and 24 in Michigan, Wisconsin, all of those Midwest states, and that we have to become a larger swath of, we need to dominate our own hemispheres, that we need our country to dominate the hemisphere by itself.
Yeah, I think that uh, you bring up a good point, and economic security is national security. A strong American economy that is independent in certain critical industries is key. Now, there are some countries with comparative advantages that will beat us out in certain goods and services. That's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles, and that's kind of what economic reality holds. But when it comes to um, uh, let's say, for example, pharmaceuticals, right? Uh, that is something that you don't really think of pharmaceuticals when it comes to national defense. But let's say, and God forbid this happens, there's a kinetic war with the Chi-Coms. Well, they hold a lot of the pharmaceutical manufacturing, okay, and they ship it to the United States. Well, if China turns off the taps, America could run out of medicine for all the different illnesses and ailments that people take medications for. And if we're not able to ramp up our own production of that, okay, in a certain period of time, basically before the shelves start to run dry, then we'll find ourselves in a real difficult position. And so I don't exactly know how that calculation is made of what industry needs to be onshored or friend shored to protect our national security, and what can be left to comparative advantage. I think in the Trump NSS, they basically said um, China can produce like household goods, and I don't exactly know what that means. Maybe they're talking about, I don't know, lamps or something. I'm looking at the lamp in my apartment right now. Well, lamp, not that important to national security, right? But armored steel, chips, semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, uranium, fuel. These are all critical things that we need to have our own supply chains for, that we can operate independently without any other country's involvement to basically not only because here's what it does. For example, you've got pictures of a refinery and some nodding donkeys on your screen there. Having our own oil production, okay, that does two things. One, it makes us have our own supply, okay, so that we're independent, okay. Two, it denies a potential enemy leverage. Leverage is key, and I brought this up already, but pragmatism and realpolitik are the things that I think govern national security, right? And so if we're dependent on another country for oil or some other critical component or something that we need, and if we lose that, then we're screwed in a lot of ways. That's one of the things that killed the Japanese during the Second World War. The Japanese islands don't have a lot of natural resources. They expanded throughout the Pacific, and, partly uh, to bring more resources to Japan. Chinese coal, oil in different countries around Southeast Asia. And as the U.S. and allied forces pushed the Japanese back and started denying them those resources, they began to really struggle and eventually fell in the end. So certain reindustrialization of those critical national security economic components is extremely key. Sorry, I feel like I'm taking up too much of the
Or
conversation.
not, Doug. The audience loves the expert analysis from Alex.
I'm no expert. I'm just dude. I'm just a guy who spends way too much time on the internet, man.
And you bring up a good, and I mentioned this last week with when I was talking about Hezbollah, is that the reason that they cannot be disarmed is that they have the leverage, and life is all about leverage. Is that even though people might not like them in Lebanese society, is that they have the larger army, they have this, they have that. And to your point, life is all about leverage. I say this all the time. And if you know, if almost like in a, not in a bar fight, but if you know you're going into a conflict and you have the receipts to back you up, you're going to win. Simple.
Yeah.
Let's go to, yeah, core principles of the document. Something that we hear the president say a lot: peace through strength. Uh, it's a high bar to make an attack, especially with the America First doctrine.
Well, and let's define peace through strength for a minute, okay? Like, I think a one dimensional understanding of that is we have a strong military, and we'll have peace with that. Well, okay, we do have a strong military. One of the other things that collapsed Rome was too much military, an overextended military that took up way too much resources, and they were trying to defend things that didn't really have a critical national security interest, right? But the point, real peace through strength, is again, it's all about leverage, right? It's we are going to kill you and destroy you. And the whole point of a strong military is fear. It's that psychological fear. And the point is to scare other nations so bad to go to war with us that that it becomes in their interest to deal peacefully with us on our terms, right? Like, look at how Trump negotiated with Colombia. So we already established illegal immigration is a national security threat.
Mhm.
Okay, well, Colombia, the president, he wanted to act tough. He wanted to be a tough guy, and he's like, I'm not going to let Trump's planes drop off these Colombian nationals here. Well, what did Trump do? He's basically said, listen, buddy, I'm going to tariff your country into the ground. Like, your country's so weak, I don't even have to do any saber rattling. I'm just going to tariff you into the ground if you don't take these illegals.
Did that on the golf course, I believe.
On the golf course.
Yeah.
He ended up sending the presidential plane, the Colombian presidential plane, to take illegals back.
Yep.
Right? That's what leverage is.
Yes. And and it's almost an America First policy is that it's not a traditional libertarian to where, we're non-interventionist ever, is that having a strong American military is that we can always play the card when we think it's helpful to defend ourselves or deter somebody. So it's not a generic, we're never going to do anything again. It's when we know we have the leverage, we can leverage it to our advantage.
Right. And also part of that, right, it's a carrot and stick approach, right? When you think about the military, it's a very stick approach, but we have the strongest economy in the world, right? So it's another good use of our leverage that when other countries behave and do what we want them to do, and when other countries benefit our national interest, we can reward them. Like, okay, let's I don't know, for
good country might be Japan. I think there's a great relationship.
Well, it's like, for example, right? Like, just to stick with the tariff example, right? Like, let's say you've got one country that wants to be a tough guy. Well, we'll tariff you into the ground. But then you have another country that says, "Hey, America, let's make a good deal here," and they make a good deal. Trump says, "Oh, hey, you're doing right by us. Okay, we'll reward your good behavior. We'll lower your tariffs," or something like that. It is carrot and stick approach.
Yes, yeah, and especially with the Treasury Treasury Secretary Scott Bassett, is that he kind of goes in the mindset to where we'll do the tariffs, and then eventually you kind of get them a squeal a little bit. It forces countries to come to the table. And
absolutely.
And our largest priorities with the NSS is that the era of mass migration is over. And it has to be. The country in the last 30 years it's changed. It's not what it was. Even when I was a little kid, I remember sitting in the grocery cart with my mom, and she was able to fill it up all the way. There were Cokes and Mountain Dew hanging off each side. The food in the cart was overflowing. It was like Thanksgiving dinner, and stuff has gotten so expensive since then, and the country has changed. And also with the mass migration, is that it's just in terms of the culture, it's not the same at all. And something that the president has mentioned a lot, and the best thing arguably is the border security is the national security. If we need to know who is in the country at all times, we can be, as I believe you mentioned earlier, we can be accepting, and we should, that's people of all backgrounds eventually have the opportunity to make it here. It's that it's not a blank check, though. There has to be some kind of vetting. It's just as if you're hiring a new employee at work,
right,
or anything like that. And we want the allies to lift much heavier weights than they have been. And you've already seen this with the NATO going from the NATO defense spending from 2 to 5% just this year.
Mm-hmm. And looking at your slide here, right? The era of mass migration is over. It is, and it has to stay over, right? Like, America is for Americans. We've been here since the beginning. We built this country. Nobody else built this country. Something I think is so fascinating, and just it's so cringe seeing the hypocrisy of these politicians. There's a video of Ilhan Omar out there. There's some there's
Oh
some
yeah,
disagreement. There's something going on in Somalia at the time with some other ethnic group or country or whatever that was trying to uh, do something in Somalia. And Ilhan Omar gets up there with her constituents and she says, "Somalia's for Somalis." It's like, well, yeah, well, America's for America too, right? Same principle, same principle. So,
and it's not a hateful thing towards other people. It's a uh, to you mentioned, they can have their cultures and their traditions and lifestyles over there
over
without
there,
forcing that onto our people.
yeah. Well, I mean, think about it. Uh, Last week's episode highlighted a key national security issue, right? You have you have tens of thousands of foreign nationals come to our country. They don't assimilate. They don't want to learn to speak English. They don't become gainfully employed. So they come to our country. They do not adopt our culture or our cultural norms. They don't even want to. I'm sure some of them have learned English, but we're speaking in terms of on net, right? On average,
Totally.
right?
Mhm.
On net, they don't assimilate. They don't become accustomed to our culture. They create their own enclave on their own, kind of like a very isolated enclave, um, where they reject America, okay, and American culture, society. And then on top of all that, they consume American welfare benefits, okay, without contributing to the economy. And then not only are they consuming our welfare benefits that, of course, were originally intended. I have my issues with the American social welfare system. Uh, Full transparency, I think that the whole thing needs to be phased out because I think America's welfare system is a net negative, but that's a discussion for another time. But they take American welfare money that was meant for America's impoverished and they send it to uh, foreign terrorist
Al
organizations.
Shabaab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Al Shabaab is receiving American welfare taxpayer money.
Yeah, that
How,
should be going towards people that are actually going through a rough time in life, or that they have kids, or maybe their spouse left them in a truly heartbreaking or unfair situation to where
right.
I need 6 months to a year to get back on my feet. That should be for Americans. We've paid into that. As we mentioned, there's an understanding that we should look out up to a point for our common citizen and peoples, because we do want Americans to succeed. However, it's not for other people in other countries, especially those that inflict terror and kill innocent people.
Well, and this scandal in Minnesota is kind of like a microcosm, right, of how the country how the country's candle, right? If America's a candle, how it's being burnt at both ends. You're importing foreign nationals that don't have any intention on becoming Americanized. They are a net drag on our welfare system and on our economy, taking American jobs, taking our welfare taxpayer dollars, and then they're sending that money to literally terrorist organizations.
That hate
Okay,
America and
they're,
want to kill us.
yeah, they're burning the candle at both ends. Okay, and Americans need to wake up and realize that, hey, yes, we are the richest country in the world and the most prosperous country in the world. Okay, but we built that. It's ours. We own it. We don't owe the world anything. Something that the left has really done is kind of say, well, how can you sit there in your air conditioned apartment with electricity and running water and not give all your country's money away to third world countries? Well, guess what? I wish people in third world countries the best. I hope that their country improves and they figure their problems out. I don't care about other countries. I don't care about anybody else anywhere in the world and their problems. I only care about us. right? And it's time for us to uh, put ourselves first and foremost again. And this requires the mass deportation of every single illegal alien and uh, shipping them back to their country. Because what happened in Minnesota is a microcosm of a much bigger problem.
Certainly, and you mentioned like that typical lefty that's like, oh, you're sitting there in your AC apartment. Well, what about the American citizen who got hooked on alcohol or drugs that's now sleeping outside the Union Station in a half ripped open sleeping bag?
Right. Right.
They should matter more than uh, illegal immigrants for sure. They deserve to be in the heated apartment, not on the dirty sidewalk with rat poop and other stuff infecting them, and they're not healthy and they're screaming at people and
Right.
making tourists uncomfortable.
Right.
Totally.
I mean, and it's that meme that's going around X right now of, like the liberals that's a real sad and concerned and upset woman next to a picture of the Venezuelan narco terrorist boats being blown up. And then the next picture is, the same person who just, is smiling and doesn't have a care in the world when it's like, the National Guardsmen that were attacked or a victim of migrant crime. Right. Like the American left is America last. And Trump is America first. It's that simple. And the way, if you want to, I would say to any viewer who's watching this show, like, if you are an American citizen, why would you want to have your taxpayer dollars uh, uh, going to anything else except for something that advances your interests as an American? It doesn't make sense.
So yeah, we're already being ripped off and screwed off enough, certainly. So let's pivot to kind of the illegal immigration point, and to where the main point that I think that all America First people that were excited to read this is the emphasis that we haven't seen in 30, 40 years, ever since this NSS became law to be produced, so the Congress could see it, so all of the agencies, et cetera, could see what the president and his admin is thinking, is the Trump corollary is kind of like the Monroe Doctrine, in the sense that we need to protect our borders and our hemisphere from foreign influence, foreign propaganda campaigns, and the image is our friend on most likely borrowed time in Venezuela. He all he's really doing is dancing and making music videos out of his English speeches to try and get the youth population to be against war. And I think most America First people to say are against like Vietnam ground invasion in the jungle necessarily, but yeah, Maduro is in bed with the Ayatollah and Putin and Ping, and that's a problem for this new NSS.
I don't really know what Trump's play is with this. I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know if he is like you taking a harsh stance on Venezuela to uh, serve as an example, maybe to other countries, like saying, "Hey, don't be like Venezuela. Look what we're doing with Venezuela right now." Um, I You can call Donald Trump many things, but one thing I don't think he is a hypocrite, right? And seeing how he was calling out the nation building in the Middle East that failed completely in Iraq and Afghanistan, I don't see him going to oust Maduro and then say, "Well, we're going to spend another $1 trillion in Venezuela teaching them, about American style constitutional government." I don't see that happening. Uh, I, I think uh, I don't, like I said, I'm trying to figure it out, but it seems to me like Trump is trying to tell the Western Hemisphere, like, hey, you each have your country, but we're the boss of our hemisphere. We have more power than you economically and militarily. You can have your country and your culture and do things the way you want to do in your borders, but you're not going to do anything that screws with us, right? Um, uh, I just don't really know what the play is with Maduro. Is he just trying to make an example out of him? Maybe assassinate him, and then just kind of let Venezuela replace him on its own or something, or uh, maybe he'll keep Maduro alive or something, and then say, look, each time Maduro misbehaves, we'll take another oil tanker or kill another narco terrorist boat or something.
Yeah.
Who knows? What's your take on it?
I think the big play is is it Machado, the lady who just won the Nobel Peace Prize. I think she's almost being set up to be if they get regime change, is to plug her in, because and I believe in her acceptance speech or whatever, attributed the prize to the president. So you can see there's some correlation, and might not be totally direct, but that's the most likely play.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to keep watching this and see how it unfolds. Uh, but I think the president is on the right track here because the Chicoms are exploiting South America's poor economic position, trying to do some Belt and Road style initiatives in South America, and that runs counter to our national interest, right? We don't want people, we don't want foreign adversaries anywhere near our hemisphere that are using their own soft power to undermine us, or maybe just kind of create some kind of counter to us in our hemisphere. Um, uh, so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But I don't really have too much to say about Venezuela because it's an active situation. Um, I'm kind of fatigued about America getting involved in new wars and stuff like that. Although I do support wholeheartedly Trump's actions in the Caribbean right now because it's no cost to our American servicemen out there. No American serviceman's been injured or killed so far. It's been nothing but a net positive to us, and it's sending a powerful message. So, I mean, this is something definitely I'm going to be keeping track of. Yeah.
You know it. And shifting to Asia, and the country that has gotten the most attention in all of the last NSSs is China, of course, the always perceived as the main global adversary to U.S. dominance. And the main goals this time is we would like to become victorious in the economic competition within China. And there's also the issue, I believe, I was watching the PBS Frontline documentary about the rise of Xi Jinping last week. And by the end of not 2026, but 2027, they ideally want to have Taiwan either regime change or something over there. And we know with the chips and all of that, Taiwan is a big player for the U.S. So there could be some kind of conflict brewing there in the next 600 some odd days when you think about it. And yeah, China is absolutely the main focus of the continent of Asia.
Yeah, I mean, when it's Taiwan's very far away and not part of the Western Hemisphere at all, and so its impact on American national security might be um, a little bit more disconnected in the immediate timeline. But um, like it said in the national security strategy, about what does it say? Like 1/3 of all global shipping goes through that first island chain, that South China Sea,
Mm-hmm.
and so making sure that shipping is not disrupted is key for American economic interests, right? Um, And one thing that stuck out to me as well in the NSS was uh, uh, that in the hypothetical, if China were to take over Taiwan and solidify control over that first island chain, they kind of have the on and off switch of that critical shipping route. And we were talking about leverage that would give China a ton of leverage, having that ability to shut off that kind of economic artery of global shipping if they were to have full control of the island chain. So,
Certainly. And we will go to Europe, and probably the most interesting and intriguing comments about Europe is that there is a major concern over mass migration within the continent to where Europe doesn't really look like Europe the way it did even 50, 60, 70 years ago. And we're urging, and the document I think really states out is that Europe is not failing because of Russia. Europe is failing because of its own inability to curtail some of these external actors. And you're seeing, whether it's from the Middle East or Africa, all of these immigrants and refugees rushing in. They're getting primetime treatment, whether it's hotels or welfare benefits or something like that. And it's making it harder for the foreign-born population to succeed in all of these countries. And the United States, we certainly need Europe to be our truly our strongest ally, in the sense that it's almost, they become a proxy a little bit for the U.S., I'd argue, and that we really want this. After the Ukraine war, I believe the NSS really detailed and laid out is that we want to be some kind of, maybe not an ally, but have some better partnership with the Russians.
yeah, of course, NATO is a relic of the Cold War. I think there's a powerful argument to be made for reassessing what NATO is going into the 21st century. There doesn't really seem to be a strong need for a U.S. European bloc against a Soviet empire that doesn't exist anymore, right? Um, I can tell you that I have not received any benefit from the couple $100 billion that has gone to Ukraine. I don't know if you have. Maybe you got some stocks in Raytheon or something. Maybe I don't know, but I don't. I haven't received any benefit from it. The thing that worries me most about Europe is their immigration policy and the trajectory that Europe is on. Right? Like, have you seen the meme of like the United Kingdom might be the next Islamist country with nuclear weapons? That's like a meme right now, but in the span of maybe one or two generations, and who knows, how the political winds may change over in that part of the world, could be a material concern, right, coming up in the next couple decades. I think Europe and what's happening there is, again, just learn from other people's mistakes, right? I was talking about learning from the mistakes of the Romans 2,000 years ago. Let's learn from the mistakes of Europe today. They're importing God knows how many people that share no cultural history, no allegiance to the country that they're seeking refuge in. They are taking on they're consuming massive welfare benefits. Keep in mind, Europe is able to have such insane welfare states because America pays for their national defense. Okay, and then anyways, you have these people, they enclaves, they don't want to assimilate, they take on the welfare benefits, and then they hate the country that they're in because they feel alienated. They don't, and it's like, yeah, they feel alienated. They don't feel like they're part of the country they're living in because they're not, and so that makes them resentful. That makes them kind of defensive, and it just creates tension, right? And I think that unless Europe course corrects, very soon. And I agree with the president. I agree with JD Vance that if Europe doesn't course correct very soon and start doing their own mass deportations and securing their borders, there's going to be a lot more civil strife. There's going to be a lot more socio-cultural issues in Europe, and it's going to be another big problem. I think Poland is doing a good job with their immigration policies. Poland is got closed borders; they've got strong borders, and they're currently much better off than other than for the UK and France, for example. And when it comes to Ukraine, man, like that is a European problem. That's not a global problem. Okay, and this uh, I don't know if it's just the boomers that they lived during the Cold War and they grew up in it, and they probably still think that Russia's the big Soviet boogeyman that wants to take over the world. Russia's a powerful country and whatnot, but this war in Ukraine has showed that uh, Russia. Uh, I'm just going to put it plainly. Russia's inability to steamroll over Ukraine has shown that Russia is not as critical a threat as it is marketed to be. Um, this BS that Russia is somehow going to take control over continental Europe or something if we don't defend Ukraine to the hill, it's nonsense. It's nonsense. Um, and I'm with the president, right? I'm with Trump. Stop the war, stop the killing. 7,000 people are dying a week, is what he's saying. Those are 7,000 mothers and fathers that are not going to have their child come home, right? That's 7,000 human beings that could be using their two hands to build something and improve their country, but they're dead in a ditch somewhere, and it's a terrible thing. Um, and so, I guess to make a long story short, like Ukraine, this war doesn't really have any benefit to us. It's costing us a lot of money, and it's a European problem, right? Like we don't owe anyone anything. We don't owe Europe all this money to defend Ukraine. We just don't.
Certainly, and we saw that three main points is that the NATO membership went up from 2% to 5% GDP,
That was
and
good.
to your point about Russia not being this global powerhouse anymore, you've shown the reliance they've needed with China. China has really kind of been their sugar daddy since if you let us get oil from Russia, we'll make you look glossy and it protect you and make sure you don't run out of resources. And about Europe in general is the birth rate is well below the number needed. A lot of these nations are at 1.2, 1.3, well below the projected and needed birth rate to continue the civilization. And it's becoming a danger to where you've seen leftists in this country even argues that, well, there's not enough children being born, so we need to ship in Hondurans or El Salvadorians to pick cherries and pick tomatoes because Americans are too lazy or there's not enough of us to do it. Kind of same deal over there, and they're losing their identity as a result.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Really. Let's move on to the Middle East, and something that out of the last 30 years, especially, the Middle East was not given as much attention or length and discussion, in the sense that there are still some intelligence disputes, but after the June strikes against the Fordo nuclear facilities and Iran, is that, well, they may be kind of neutered to the point where the Middle East is almost like Europe. That's their kind of Ukraine. Fighting between Iran and Israel and the proxies is just kind of let them handle it. The Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman was here, I believe, 2-3 weeks ago, and I believe there was some kind of almost NATO-like agreement that we signed with them or verbally agreed to, and there's Turkey over there. They're NATO. They need to have a little bigger muscle in the game, and Egypt as well, and the Israelis too. So the Middle East was not as beefed up this time, especially with the 2017 Trump NSS, especially around the Iranians.
Yeah, well, in this one, in the 2025 NSS, Trump said explicitly that we're shifting gears away from the Middle East.
Mhm.
And what's interesting is I was thinking about Syria because Syria was mentioned in the NSS. And yes, this guy, his name escapes me at the moment. He was former Al Qaeda.
Bashar, no, that's Assad.
I think Al Shara or something is his
Yeah,
name.
something like that.
Yeah. Anyways, he was former Al Qaeda. Yes, the U.S. had a bounty on his head, but now he runs Syria. Okay. Um, um, America does not have to, like, we are not required to only engage in mutually beneficial relationships with other Western style governments. Okay. Syria has its own history that goes back thousands of years. They've got their own people, their own language, culture. They've got their own way of doing things. Okay. That's their problem. Okay. I don't know. The Syrian economy is probably still recovering big time from, over a decade of civil war. So there might not be much in terms of business opportunities that can benefit the United States right now, as far as I know. But one thing that um, could benefit the United States is not having to deal with or worry about a destabilized Syria where you have different terrorist groups running amok and you have um, a destabilized country that might filter out to further destabilization elsewhere in the Middle East. So I wonder, I'm speculating here, I wonder if Trump's approach to kind of trying to build a relationship with this former Al Qaeda terrorist who now runs Syria. I wonder if his
Al Shara is
Al
his name.
Shara. I wonder if Trump's goal or intention with Al Shara is to say, okay, you're now the leader of Syria. It's in my interest to have a Syria that's somewhat stabilized so that I don't have to worry about it so much, and I can turn my attention to the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, turn my attention to the Western Hemisphere, right? Because it's not America first to make sure that we have a constitutional republic in set up in Syria, and that all the Syrians are reading their James Madison. Okay, it's not America first. Right? What is America first is to make sure that there's not ISIS elements in Syria that are plotting an attack on the United States, and that this guy has that country under control so that the region is not being destabilized, and we can take our attention elsewhere. Because we spent enough time and money on the Middle East, man. It's time for them to solve their own problems, and we failed at trying to solve their problems for them. So, quit throwing good money after bad, right?
You know it, and that's the mindset of a lot of Americans now. Absolutely, and we shift our attention slightly southwest of the Middle East and Africa. The our country last week, the Horn of Africa. You see on the right side, it's kind of sticking out like a rhino horn, and we're trying to move from constant aid from all of these failing regimes that collapse within 5 to 7 years most of the time, and really trying to focus on more energy and minerals that are seemed or perceived as critical for U.S. national security, and avoiding, like in Libya with Muammar Gaddafi, long-term military commitments that cost money and that ultimately don't benefit America first.
Right. I mean, you have got. We just talked about the Middle East. I don't want to go back to it, but you just brought up Gaddafi in Libya. So Gaddafi in Libya and Saddam Hussein in Iraq are two interesting figures. Okay, because sure, both of them might have been bad people. Okay, uh, you know, uh, newsflash, most politicians in the U.S. are also not the best people, Republican or Democrat. Usually, people who rise the ranks in politics and become heads of state have, some skeletons in the closet. They've done some bad things. But Saddam Hussein, despite being a dictator, the Middle East was better off with Saddam in charge, being that natural counterbalance to Iran than what we have now. Libya was better off under Gaddafi with all his, repression and all the bad things he did. Libya was better off under Gaddafi than the failed state that it is now, where they have open air slave markets. Okay, like you want to talk about, slavery? Well, the West solved that problem a long time ago. Libya still to this day has it practices slavery, right? Africa, it's a country, it's a continent that has a lot of potential for growth. It's also got a lot of problems, and it's not America's problem to solve African issues. Okay, but I think that an America First approach to Africa is one. It's not necessarily, I would say, countering China's influence in Africa, although that's kind of part of it. But we can maybe take a page out of China's playbook here and say, how can we operate with African countries that is beneficial to us, right? So it's like, I don't know, take a mineral-rich African country, okay, and say something to the effect, I'm speculating here, but maybe like, hey, African country, you give us access to your minerals and we will teach you how to build roads or something. We will teach you how to build a coal power plant in exchange for, you giving us access to maybe building a naval base or something, or, giving us mineral rights or something like that. So.
And to your points about Iraq, is that now Saddam was a Sunni Muslim, so it was a Sunni Muslim majority that countered Iran, and now it's just a vassal state for Iran. And Gaddafi had the water project, the water pipe project that brought water. Many people said it was the eighth wonder of the world, what he built, and now he's gone, and it's open slave market. So
interesting. I'll have to look into that water project. I don't know what that is. I'll have to look into that. Thanks for telling me.
It's a good read. Get a little learning. And so, yeah, some major differences between this NSS and Joe Biden's NSS is the woke stuff you mentioned about climate change and fossil fuels and all of that crap. This NSS does not deal with any of that stuff at all, and it redirects resources back to the Western Hemisphere and trying to ensure dominance on our side of the world.
Right.
And the biggest thing is the border. That's the thing that got him in office, and he should continue to play that trump card as long as he's in office.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, one of the biggest differences between the Biden and Trump NSS was, like, Biden was saying that diversity. We need more diversity, and that's a strength. Well, we just talked about Minnesota. Well, it turns out that diversity is actually fracturing our country. It's creating segmented enclaves of people that don't like this country. Okay, it's you've got American citizens at odds and at loggerheads with one another. Okay, with these different you see videos on social media of leftists trying to fight people that disagree with them and morally shame them and whatnot, and saying you're a bad person, and then all the woke and equity initiatives in the Department of War. The empirical evidence was showing that it was making America a less effective fighting force, right? And so, seeing the reintroduction of just basic meritocracy, getting rid of the woke DEI nonsense, and saying, hey, we are a results-oriented meritocratic system here that is out for the American interest. We're no longer trying to save the world. We're no longer trying to, do social experiments in the military. Military is meant to kill and destroy anything that steps in the way of America's health and survival. And we're going to do that in the most effective way possible. So, yeah, but
Absolutely, and trying to put America first, and the ending all of this DEI woke stuff that ultimately did not pan out to benefit our people. And I believe our last slide of the evening. So why does this national security strategy matter in the grand scheme of all things? Is that it restores clarity and puts America first. It protects and strengthens core American interests instead of the globalist ideas, and it rebuilds our pride and national strength within our own borders that we have lacked and have been told basically if you want America first, you need to shut up, or you're a racist, or you're this or that, you're sexist, you hate all people that aren't white, and it sets firm limits on foreign intervention. Is that, and I believe James or Thomas Jefferson wrote this, is that like we don't want to be trying to catch enemies across overseas, and it realigns our power towards basically it's a two-man race. Especially you're seeing this with AI, is us and China. We're the two top dogs on our planet Earth right now.
yeah, and I think the NSS can be summed up really. If you take the neocon / Biden NSS versus the Trump 2.0, what the Trump NSS is doing is it is realigning the thought paradigm. Okay, it's redefining the goals and strategy of the United States. The Biden NSS was all about what we are going to do for the world. We are going to protect the world, save the world, bring more democracy to the world, all these things. It's very outward focused. What Trump did was he's saying, no, pause. We need to focus on what benefits us, what's pragmatic, what's realistic for us, right? We are going to prioritize America and what benefits America. We're not trying to spread democracy through the world anymore. That's done. If another country wants, to copy and paste the U.S. Constitution and make that their Constitution, knock yourself out. Go right ahead. I don't care about what other countries do. I just don't. As long as our relationship with that country benefits us. And so, I think that was the what makes this document so important is it shifts the priorities of the United States away from this kind of globalist, very idealistic mindset to, say, hey, we're done with that. We're focusing on what is realistic, what are the cards on the table that we have to play right now. And the goal is in any and all of our dealings with the world and how we use our military, it has to answer the question, how is this good for the United States? So I think it's powerful stuff.
You know it, and see that's the end of the presentation, and we will now field questions from the audience. Let's see if I can get this back to where we're the larger players here. Awesome. All right, yeah, we're the main shot. Let's see if comments can pop up here. Okay, I have it on my. I'll pull it up on my phone because I only have my laptop right now. Yeah. If anyone has any questions for myself or our inaugural guest, Alex, We'd love to hear them. We'd love to field them and see what you guys are thinking at this time about the NSS or really any topics that boggles your mind. We ran a pretty solid show, I think. Um, yeah, for having guests on first time, like I think it could not have gone any smoother at all.
No, I think this was a great conversation, Alden. I really want to thank you for inviting me on your show. I think that uh, it was a great presentation of the NSS. I think that um, it's going to be more important as time goes on for Americans to start paying attention to the products and of these types of documents coming out
Mm.
of their federal government, right? Kind of rather than just paying our taxes and voting every couple of years and just kind of leaving everything else kind of to the wayside. I think uh, it's America first to have more Americans pay closer attention to what their country, what their elected government is saying and the direction they want to take the country. I think this NSS is a very powerful one, and it's definitely going to result, I think, in a massive change in the overall direction of U.S. Foreign policy and national security policy. And I think I had a great time talking about it with you and learning more about it, hearing your perspective about it. I even wore some purple today, in honor of the theme of the show. So it was great to be here, and hopefully we'll do it again sometime, man.
Yeah, we'll have to have you be a recurring guest on the show. I'm sure the audience loved the conversation that we had on this evening.
Absolutely. Well, I guess that's it. Time to sign off.
Yeah, I think we had a comment. Great show by at Brad Harrell -R4T. Thank you, Brad. We appreciate the kind comment and your expectation this evening. And we had another comment from at Roy3121. Looking forward to seeing Alex back on the show.
Oh, thank you, Roy.
The audience already wants you back. The conversation. What Alex back, baby.
Well, hey, it's all thanks to Aulden, man. Happy to join your platform anytime. I think this is going to only grow further, and it's just going to be, you're going to be celebrating your 1 millionth subscriber before you know it, man.
Heck yeah, man. Let's keep going.
So, all right. Well,
all right, everybody. Well, you have watched another episode of Awoken with Aulden, and you have been awoken with Aulden. All right, much love, everybody. Good night. Thank you again to our inaugural guest, Alex, for joining us, and we will, we will end it here. Much love, everybody. Good night, and we'll see you next week.